We spend a lot of time talking about independence like it's this ultimate human goal. Like it's the absolute peak of adult achievement.
Oh, definitely. The whole pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality.
You stand on your own 2 feet, you handle your own problems, and you never, ever let them see you sweat. And it's a fantastic philosophy.
Until it isn't.
Exactly. Right up until the ground completely drops out from under those 2 feet.
Because when gravity suddenly shifts, fierce independence can look an awful lot like free fall.
Yeah, that is so true. So welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're extracting the psychological blueprints of grief, trauma, and really just survival from Rebecca Yarros' novel, The Last Letter.
It is such a heavy but genuinely beautiful text.
It really is. We are looking at what happens when fiercely independent people are crushed by unimaginable circumstances and how they end up finding lifelines in the absolute last place they'd ever expect.
Yeah, it's a remarkable exploration of resilience. We are essentially analyzing a collision course between two very different but very extreme types of isolation.
Okay, so let's set the parameters of this collision for you. First, we have Ella Mackenzie. She is 24 years old and a single mother raising 5-year-old twins, Maisie and Colt.
And she's not just raising twins.
No, she's also running a luxury bed and breakfast called Solitude, which is in Telluride, Colorado. And she took this massive operational burden over at age 20 after her grandmother died.
20. I mean, just think about that.
Right, just incredibly young. Then, on the completely opposite side of the human spectrum, we have Beckett Gentry.
Also known by his military call sign, Chaos.
Yes, Chaos. He's a 28-year-old Tier 1 Special Ops soldier. He comes from a deeply tragic foster care background, and really his only companion is his highly trained military working dog, a lab named Havoc.
So you have two people who, structurally speaking, share absolutely nothing in their day-to-day lives.
Nothing at all.
And their lives only intersect because of a pen pal arrangement. It's initiated by Ella's brother, Ryan, who happens to be Beckett's best friend and squad mate.
Yeah, Ryan notices his friend never gets an email, right? So he just suggests Ella write to him.
Exactly. Just a simple, hey, maybe write to my buddy.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because these aren't just polite, how's the weather postcards.
Not at all.
They are handwritten in pen, completely uncensored, and they rapidly become the only safe haven for two people carrying immense psychological weight.
It happens so fast, too.
It does. Ella's letters just radiate exhaustion. She was abandoned by her ex, Jeff, pretty much the second she got pregnant with the twins. And she tells Chaos that she isn't the center of her kids' universe. She describes herself as their gravity.
Wow. Gravity.
Yeah, she's the invisible force just keeping them grounded and safe.
And then in response, you read Beckett's letters, and it's this portrait of total, profound isolation. When he was abandoned by his mother at a bus station when he was 4 years old.
God, 4 years old.
Yeah. And he just bounced through the foster system after that.
Yeah.
So he explicitly views attachments as dangerous.
Like biological traps, almost.
Exactly. To him, connections are just the things that will inevitably get you kicked out of wherever you're staying.
But I have to push back here a little bit.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Because I read these incredibly intimate letters and I kept thinking of it like a blind confession booth. Doesn't the fact that they've never actually met make it easier, to be honest?
That's a really interesting point.
Right. Like, are they falling in love with real people, or are they just falling in love with the idea of a phantom? Someone who can't actually hurt them because of the literal physical distance? It feels almost like an avoidance strategy.
I can see why you'd say that. You might think it's just the safety of distance. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's actually about stripping away the roles they are forced to play in their physical lives.
How so?
Well, psychologists often call this the stranger on a train effect. Have you ever found yourself spilling your deepest regrets to someone sitting next to you on a flight?
Oh, definitely. Telling them things you wouldn't even tell your own spouse.
Precisely. And why is that? It's because they aren't entangled in the web of your daily consequences.
Because you know you'll never see them again at baggage claim.
Exactly. The anonymity is what breeds the vulnerability. In her real life, Ella doesn't have the luxury of breaking down. She has to be the unflappable boss to her employees and the invincible mom to her twins.
Right, a gravity.
Yes. And Beckett, surrounded by these highly trained operators, he doesn't have the luxury of admitting his profound loneliness without seeming weak.
That makes a lot of sense.
Through the letters, there is no physical proximity, which means there is no immediate threat of abandonment. So they aren't avoiding reality. They're actually accessing a truer version of themselves because that societal armor is finally off.
Yeah, they are building this incredibly insulated emotional sanctuary of words, just offering each other unconditional acceptance.
Which is something neither of them has ever really had.
But, the problem with sanctuaries is that they aren't bulletproof. And the shift in the source material from these everyday struggles to absolute crisis, it is incredibly jarring.
It really is. It plunges us straight into the isolation of fighting an indomitable enemy.
And it begins very quietly, too. Which is how most nightmares start, honestly.
Yeah, it's just a subtle shift.
Maisie, Ella's 5-year-old daughter, develops this persistent hip pain, and her local pediatrician completely dismisses it.
She suggests just growing pains.
Growing pains, or perhaps even psychosomatic stress from Ella being a young single mother.
Which is just so infuriating.
Oh, totally. But Ella knows her daughter's baseline. She forces the issue. She takes Maisie to a larger hospital and eventually to Denver Children's Hospital, and that is where she gets hit with a devastating reality.
Stage 4 neuroblastoma.
Yeah, and the clinical details in the text are just staggering. The tumor is on Maisie's adrenal gland and kidney. The cancer has already taken over 90% of her bone marrow.
90%.
And the doctors sit this 24-year-old mother down and calmly explain that her daughter has a 10% chance of surviving a year.
It is an unfathomable, crushing
I
hit.
can't even imagine.
And the timing is just cruel. Because precisely at the moment when Ella leans hardest into her correspondence with chaos to survive this nightmare, the absolute worst happens.
Right, on New Year's Eve.
Yes. Uniforms arrive at Ella's door in Telluride. Her brother Ryan has been killed in action, and consequently, the letters from chaos abruptly, silently stop.
She is entirely alone, and the juxtaposition here is brilliant but agonizing. You have Beckett's literal war zone overseas and Ella's medical war zone in the pediatric oncology ward.
Two very different kinds of battlefields.
Exactly, and my reaction to this, I kept looking at how Ella processes this double impact trauma. She essentially turns her emotions into a submarine that's taking on water.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. She seals off the flooded compartments to keep the rest of the ship from sinking. She completely locks away her grief for her brother so the Maisie compartment can stay buoyant, so she can fight this cancer monster. But isn't hypercompetence just another form of hiding?
It is, yeah. But we really need to understand the physiological mechanism of why she's doing it.
Okay, lay it on me.
Ella refuses to ask for help, even from her incredibly loyal employees, Ada and Larry, who are practically family.
She won't let anyone step in.
No. And this isn't just stubbornness. It's a deeply ingrained trauma response fueled by adrenaline. Biologically, she is in a constant state of fight or flight.
Because if she stops moving, she has to actually feel the terror.
Exactly. When you are facing something massive and uncontrollable like cancer cells multiplying in your child's marrow, the human brain panics because it has no agency.
It can't fight the cells directly.
Right, so the brain searches for proxies. Psychologically, organizing out-of-network bills, managing chemo schedules, meticulously updating binders full of medical data that isn't just administrative work for Ella.
It's her way of fighting.
It is a proxy for fighting the disease. By controlling the paperwork, her brain is tricked into feeling like she is controlling the neuroblastoma. If she lets go of the control wheel for even a fraction of a second, her subconscious believes her daughter will die.
Wow. Think about that in your own life, Have you ever had a moment where your world was spinning out of control, maybe a sudden layoff or a family emergency, and you abruptly started hyper-organizing your garage?
Or frantically color-coding your inbox.
Yes, it's the illusion of control. Ella is running purely on adrenaline and fumes. Which brings us to a massive turning point. 4 months after Ryan's death, a ghost arrives at her door.
Enter Beckett.
Yep. Beckett shows up in Telluride with his dog, Havoc. He rents the cabin at Solitude for 7 months, and he presents Ella with a letter from Ryan, a letter Ryan wrote in case he died, begging his best friend to go take care of his sister and niece.
This introduces a layer of dramatic irony that completely shifts the emotional landscape of the story.
Because Ella has absolutely no idea.
None at all. She doesn't know that this brooding, highly capable stranger moving in next door is actually chaos.
The very man she poured her entire soul out to in those letters.
Right.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Because Beckett flatly refuses to tell her who he is.
He keeps it completely buried.
Yeah. He knows from her letters that she absolutely despises lies and omissions, but he feels this immense, suffocating survivor's guilt over Ryan's death.
Because he was right there in the dirt when Ryan died.
Exactly. He lived, Ryan didn't. Beckett believes that if she knows he is chaos, she will immediately look at him and see the reason her brother is dead. She'll kick him out, and he will fail his final mission to his best friend.
So he just operates in secret.
He does. He bonds instantly with little Colt. Colt falls in love with Havoc the dog, and Beckett starts showing this softer, protective side that slowly chips away at Ella's defensive armor. But is Beckett really lying to protect Ella?
Yeah.
Or is he lying to protect himself from being rejected again?
What's fascinating here is that Beckett's actions are a study in intense contradiction. Let's look at the mechanics of what he's actually doing. During his stay, his military captain visits and offers him a spot on a 5-year disabled list with full pay.
Which is huge.
It's a golden ticket. It's a chance to preserve his elite military career, his pension, his financial future while he heals. And Beckett turns it down flat.
Just throws it away.
He effectively ends his career entirely so he can stay physically near Ella and fulfill his promise to Ryan.
I mean, that is an act of profound, life-altering selflessness.
It is. Yet, simultaneously, he is incredibly selfish in keeping his identity hidden. You asked if he's protecting her or himself. The psychology of that secret is rooted entirely in self-preservation.
It really is.
Survivor's guilt makes you feel like your very existence is a crime against the person who died. But beyond that, he's terrified that if she sees the real him, she will discard him.
Just like his mother did at the bus station. And we do this all the time, don't we? We convince ourselves we are lying to protect the other person from the ugly truth. But if we are really honest, usually we are just shielding ourselves from the fallout.
Oh, absolutely. It's human nature.
Beckett isn't protecting Ella from the truth. He's protecting himself from being rejected. It's so incredibly complex because as a reader, you are just screaming at the page, like, just tell her.
Right.
But you also see exactly why he can't. He has become completely structurally essential to her survival, whether she wants to admit it or not.
He really has.
And that brings us to the breaking point. The climax of this medical journey where the physiological toll of her hypercompetence finally cashes its check.
The pressure on Ella just reaches a critical mass. Let's look at the compounding variables here.
Okay.
First, there is a crushing financial strain. She heavily mortgaged the Solitude property and, tragically, dropped to a low-premium health insurance plan right before Maisie's diagnosis.
Worst possible timing.
Truly. Now she is actively drowning in out-of-network bills for the Denver Children's Hospital. And on top of that mountain of stress, Maisie is facing a grueling, high-risk, 11-hour surgery to remove the tumor and hopefully save her left kidney.
It's the ultimate test of her submarine strategy, and the rivets are popping.
They really are.
And Beckett steps up in a way that just bypasses all her defenses. In her panicked state, Ella forgets her meticulous medical binder back at the house in Telluride.
Which is her proxy for control, remember?
Yeah. Lifeline. So Beckett drives 6 hours to Denver just to hand deliver it to her.
Just for a binder.
Yeah. And he plans to drop it off and leave, but little Maisie, right before she goes into this terrifying surgery, whispers a specific request to him. She says, I don't want her to be alone, meaning her mom.
God, that's heartbreaking.
So Beckett stays. He spends the night sitting on a tiny, uncomfortable hospital waiting room couch.
And we shouldn't overlook the incredible collateral damage this illness takes on the rest of the family ecosystem, too.
Oh, right, the twin dynamic.
Yarros includes this deeply moving detail about Colt's pink bear. The twins exchange their favorite teddy bears so they could always be together while Maisie is hospitalized.
Which just guts you.
It highlights the quiet, confusing suffering of the healthy sibling. Colt is just as much a part of this fight, absorbing the ambient trauma of his sister's absence and his mother's sheer terror.
Yes, the entire family is holding its breath. So the surgery stretches on for 11 agonizing hours.
An eternity when you're waiting.
And finally, the surgeon comes out to the waiting room. He confirms they got the tumor and they managed to save the kidney.
The immediate threat is neutralized.
And this is the moment. This is when Ella finally breaks. She collapses. Her knees literally give out from under her in the middle of the waiting room.
The adrenaline just completely leaves her body.
Yeah. And Beckett catches her. He acts as the physical structural wall, holding her upright while she violently finally sobs. So what does this all mean?
It's a huge release.
It is. We always tell people during a crisis to stay strong. Society demands it, right? You have to be strong for your kids. Keep a stiff upper lip. But looking at Ella in this waiting room, looking at the pure exhaustion of her hypercompetence, isn't her true moment of strength the exact second she allows her knees to give out and lets someone else catch her?
This raises an important question about how we fundamentally define human resilience.
Let's hear it.
We often equate strength with unyielding rigidity. We picture an oak tree or a stone wall that never moves.
Right, something solid.
But structurally speaking, rigidity is just brittleness in disguise. A rigid structure breaks under extreme prolonged pressure.
Like the submarine cracking.
Exactly. True strength in engineering and in human psychology is elasticity.
Elasticity.
Think of a massive skyscraper in an earthquake zone. If the engineers build it to be perfectly rigid, the seismic waves will just snap it in half.
Oh, sure.
The building only survives the earthquake if it is designed to sway. It has to yield to the pressure to remain standing. Ella has been terrifyingly rigid for a year. Her collapse in the waiting room is the moment she finally allows herself to sway.
That is a phenomenal way to look at it. She is finally yielding to the seismic wave.
And notice Beckett's role here. He isn't swooping in as the hero to save Ella.
No, she did the saving.
Exactly. She has already done the agonizing, grinding work of saving her daughter, managing the bills, and steering the ship. What Beckett does is simply provide the architectural support for her to safely sway.
He's giving her space.
For a woman who has spent her entire adult life being the gravity for her kids, her employees, and her broken family, Beckett briefly becomes the gravity for her.
He becomes the ground so she doesn't have to be.
Beautifully said.
Which brings this all back to you listening to this right now. We all have moments where the weight of the world is just resting entirely on our shoulders.
Everyone goes through it.
Maybe it's an escalating crisis at work where everyone is looking to you for answers. Maybe it's caring for a sick, aging parent, or just the exhausting daily grind of keeping your family afloat. When you are in that high-pressure space and the seismic waves start hitting, do you build thicker walls and try to remain rigid?
Or do you sway?
Exactly. Do you allow yourself the elasticity to let someone else be your gravity? Because what Ella's story profoundly illustrates is that true survival sometimes requires us to surrender our fierce independence. It requires us to let someone else carry the load so we don't snap.
It is a profound realization, and honestly, a really difficult one to put into practice.
Very difficult.
But, of course, the architectural stability in the last letter leaves us with a lingering, highly volatile variable.
Uh-oh, the secret.
Yeah. Ella is slowly starting to trust Beckett. She is letting him hold her together. She is relying on his gravity. But what happens when the very person acting as your anchor is harboring a secret that could blow your entire world apart?
It's the foundational paradox of their relationship. The radical honesty that saved her in those anonymous letters is entirely missing from the man physically sitting next to her in the hospital.
Precisely. When Ella eventually discovers that Beckett is chaos, and that he was right there in the dirt when her beloved brother Ryan died, will this newly forged elasticity hold?
That's the real question.
Will the foundation of trust they've built be strong enough to absorb the shockwave of that lie? Or will that revelation completely destroy the fragile, hard-won peace she has just finally found?
Gravity can hold you to the earth, but if the ground gives way, you're still falling. Something for you to think about the next time you decide to carry it all on your own. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.